And welcome back, everybody, to another episode of New York State of Sports here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Ricky K here with you today, episode 75. Happy to have you back for another milestone episode. And in today's episode, the Jets finally have a new head coach, and they finally have a new general manager. Aaron Glenn and Darren Mogi will be introduced to the media in about an hour. We're going to do this live here on a Monday. It might not have been the perfect hires, but they're the right hires. And we'll dive into the many reasons why that is the case coming up next. We'll also be talking about the all-quarter century teams, the Devils, Islanders, and Rangers. Those were announced this week. Did the NHL get these right? Were there some snubs involved? And a lot of these teams deal with some big injuries, Devils and Islanders included, as all three New York teams try to make the postseason. Knicks get right back on track this week with a big week ahead as a marquee matchup at the Garden. The Mets owner Steve Cohen makes some interesting comments on the Pete Alonso negotiations as he still is out of team, but about 2 weeks ago until spring training. And St. John's probably moving up in the AP poll today after a great overtime win against Xavier on Wednesday. Rutgers falls to Michigan State, and so much more. Coming up, we'll also give a quick take on last night's conference championships, looking ahead to the Super Bowl, the Eagles, and the Chiefs. It's all coming up next here on New York State of Sports, and we'll see you in just a minute. Of course, thanks once again for joining me here on New York State of Sports on IE Sports Radio Direct Feed for all the sports. Ricky K here with you today on a Monday, which is happy last Monday in January. Of course, we're going to have a Super Bowl talk and all that stuff next week. Eli Manning potentially making the Hall of Fame next week. We'll dive into all that stuff then. But of course, today is all about the Jets and all about their new changes that they have made. Want to remind you, of course, you can follow us on X, IG, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube at IE Sports Radio. Be sure to like and subscribe. All of our shows are on YouTube. So anytime we go live, you will get an alert when that show will go on. You go to IESportsRadio.com, look for all of our shows. Mine is /New York State of Sports. You'll learn more about me, learn more about the network, learn more about the show as we hit another milestone here with episode 75. If you miss any portion of this show, or you just want to hear me talk again, Apple, Spreaker, any place you get your podcasts, Spotify, you will find this show. You can follow me on X at Rickinator555, or you can follow the show at NY State Sports IE. And if you're here in the YouTube chat, feel free to chime in. Let me know what you think about the Jets head coach and GM hires, your thoughts on the championship games. We'll talk, of course, about the Giants getting up close and personal with Shedeur Sanders this week at the East-West Shrine game, what that could mean, and so much more. But first, we'll take a little quick break. We will come back, and we will talk all about Aaron Glenn and Darren Mogi, the new head coach and GM of the New York Jets. You're listening to New York State of Sports on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all this sports. We'll be right back in just a few minutes.
IE Sports Radio fans, this show is brought to you by Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky. Planet Jerky is the official jerky of the 2022 California League champion Lake Elsinore Storm, single-A affiliate of the San Diego Padres. This all-brisket jerky has gluten-free options, contains no MSG, no sodium nitrate, is low in sugar, and high in protein. Go to their website at planetjerky.net and follow them on Instagram at Planet Jerky. Planet Jerky, the jerky that's on a whole other planet.
rise and shine. It's 4 a.m. The stars are still out. The sun is beneath the horizon, but it's time to punch in and go to work. The comfort of your warm-ups turns into the grinding out of your reps as the clinking and the clinking of the plates create a symphony of euphoria. There's no other feeling like it. Earn it, burn it, and take what's yours. IE Sports Radio has proudly partnered with Vital Apparel, a brand that not only fits great, but also promotes and donates to mental health research. Use our code IESR to get 15% off their comfortable and inspiring gym wear and help them on their amazing journey to support mental health. Go hard, take part in your iron therapy, and be strong. Because when your mental health is as strong as you are, there's no telling how far you'll go.
And our special thanks to the folks at Planet Jerky and Vital Apparel. Of course, you're looking for that Super Bowl snack or that big game snack. Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky is a place for you to go. And again, with mental health being a big issue year-round, you want to help get some inspiring gym wear, Vital Apparel is where you want to go. And you can use our code IESR and get 15% off all of that stuff. So be sure to check that out. And also, our newest sponsor, get some cool raw nutrition supplements. Go to GetRawNutrition.com. If you use the promo code IESR, you get 10% off, which is fantastic. So be sure to check both those companies out today. Of course, Taryn Rodriguez is here. Taryn, good to see you. Ralph, good to hear from you as well. And of course, we're going to talk about Aaron Glenn, a 5-year deal, returning to the place that he called home as a player, returning to the place where, if you are not that familiar with Aaron Glenn as a player, one of the better cover corners in the late 90s for the Jets into the early 2000s before going to the expansion Houston Texans. And look, when you look at this process, one of the things you've got to give the Jets credit for is they did a thorough search. They interviewed 15-plus coaching candidates, 15-plus GM candidates. There is no reason to say the Jets did not take their time with this process. The 33rd team assistants from Mike Tannenbaum and Rick Spielman, I think, did play help in this. I think the Jets know how important this hire is, know how critical this hire is to get right. So the question is going to be, there's a lot of questions around Aaron Glenn, was this the right hire? Was it the perfect hire? It's probably not the perfect hire. The perfect hire, unfortunately, for the Jets was Mike Rabel. And if Jerod Mayo doesn't get fired by the New England Patriots, I think you're most likely seeing Mike Rabel as the head coach of the Jets. But that's besides the point. Aaron Glenn doesn't have to be the right hire, but to me, he's the good hire. And there's a couple of reasons why. And I know Jeff Van's going to sit there and tell you this is another defensive coach, another coach with no experience. They're going to tell you that the Lions defense was a shell of themselves at the end of the year. What makes Aaron Glenn work? For one, when you listen to Aaron Glenn talk, I recommend finding the Pivot podcast that's hosted by Ryan Clark, Fred Taylor, and Shannon Crowder. They did an episode with Aaron Glenn about, I think, a year or two ago. And one of the things you notice is he is a leader of men. And I think that's what the Jets need most right now. It doesn't matter what expertise you have, offensive, defensive, special teams, you need a leader. And the one thing you look at Aaron Glenn and you hear Aaron Glenn, you'll hear him today in about an hour. We'll try to stay on as long as we can to get some of what Aaron Glenn is saying to the New York media today. He is a leader, period. I don't need him to be X's and O's guy. I don't need him to be this revolutionary game changer kind of guy. And I think I just need him to be a leader and a guy that's a no-nonsense kind of dude. Needs to be a guy that holds people accountable in the locker room. Needs to be a guy that is a player's guy, but isn't afraid to have those hard conversations. And I think Aaron Glenn is that. So that's number one. Number two, what you lack in New York experience, lack in coaching experience, you have in New York experience. Because all these first-time coaches, they come to New York, and you've seen it with the Giants. You've seen it with the Pat Shurmurs and the Joe Judges. And you've seen it with Adam Gase with the Jets. It's all about they don't know how to handle New York. There's a certain different way to handle being in the New York media market. And you be afraid to say the wrong thing. Maybe you say something that you didn't mean to say, but it comes out in context differently. Aaron Glenn was around New York reporters for years. And yes, he wasn't around in the days of social media, but in a way, he knows how to relate to the New York media. And I think that's why his press conference today is going to be fantastic, because he's going to know what to say and what not to say. And I think that helps in a big deal. I mean, look at Carlos Mendoza for the Mets. First-time manager, but he was familiar with being in New York, being the Yankees bench coach. And he knew to bring New York players around him. And we joked the Mets take all the ex-Yankees, but there's a reason for that. They know which players can handle New York. Aaron Glenn is going to know, okay, when he goes to free agency, he's going to see who can fit here both on the field and in the locker room. He's going to know how to fit both those things. And to me, that having New York experience is very difficult to find, because this is the toughest place to coach. It's the toughest place to play. If you win, you get in the Canyon of Heroes and you're immortalized forever. You lose and you're a laughingstock. People remember that. You're judged in New York by results. I mean, the Jets have one of the longest playoff droughts in sports history. They've been in the playoffs in 14 years. So they know what is a good hire, if not a good hire. And Aaron Glenn has to find a way to kind of relate to that to the New York media. Another thing that works in his favor, he's a culture changer. I mean, being a part of Dan Campbell's coaching staff and being a part of an organization in the Lions that was a laughingstock for many years. He comes over and plays a small part in changing that culture. I mean, you look at the Lions, and yes, their defense was awful in the divisional round against Jaden Daniels, but watch the Viking tape. Watch a team that had its best player go out for the year in like week 6, Naden Hutchinson. And Aaron Glenn knew how to make the most of what he had as a coach. He got the most out of those players. They had a guy play corner in the divisional round that played one snap in the regular season. So if that's the case, and you're talking about these things, then Aaron Glenn, to me, is going to know what's going to work and what's not going to work. He's going to know what pieces are going to fit in. He's going to know how to change a culture. He's done it. He may have not been the big catalyst in that. That's Campbell. But to me, Glenn has made that case, and he's paid his dues. He's been a scout with the Jets when he got out of the NFL. Took a little bit of a break, came back, came a scout. He's been a position coach. He's been a coordinator. He's done everything I think the Jets could look for. And once Mike Rabel was out, I mean, you look at Brian Flores, you look at Josh McCown, you look at all these guys they looked at, and there wasn't a perfect guy. There was not somebody that was like, yeah, that's who I would want the Jets to hire. Because everybody had pros and cons to making those moves. And I think the one criticism you could have of the Jets coaching search is why not interview Mike McCarthy? We don't know if the Jets reached out to McCarthy or not. I mean, if they're looking to keep Aaron Rodgers, maybe Mike McCarthy isn't the best way to go about it, but we're going to find out what's going to happen with that. Now, the Jets also made a hire at GM, Darren Mogi, who is the assistant GM with Denver under George Patton. And the one thing you learn about Mogi, he's been around the block with a bunch of different guys. He's been around the Broncos organization. When you look at his track record and look at if you read some of the quotes from John Elway, who has been around him, kind of knows what he's looking for as a talent evaluator. He was part of the draft of the Broncos, got Patrick Surtain, so Bo Nix. He's been a part of that. So if you're a big believer in that, you're really going to love what Mogi is able to do. And remember, he was part of he will work with Aaron Glenn pretty well. Adam Schefter reported on Saturday that when the Broncos interviewed Aaron Glenn for their coaching search a couple years ago before hiring Sean Payton, Mogi was on that search committee. So he is going to be one to be very familiar with Aaron Glenn in this process. And as I said, Mogi's worked with different coaches. He's worked with John Fox. He's worked with Gary Kubiak. So he's been a part of Super Bowl winning teams. He's been working with Sean Payton. Aaron Glenn has worked with Sean Payton. And you look at Aaron Glenn, another thing that's in his favor, think about all the coaches that Aaron Glenn has been around in his career. When you think about being with Bill Parcells, being with Bill Belichick, being with Sean Payton, being with Todd Bowles. And I know Todd Bowles isn't well received with the Jets, but Todd Bowles is a good coach in his own right. He's been a Super Bowl coordinator. Glenn has been around all those different personalities, all those different things, and kind of can pick and choose what things he wants to be as a coach. He's going to be his authentic self. And I think when you look at this process, having Mogi in place, who I think they're going to be able to work together. A lot of the shock was that they didn't go out and get Lance Newmark. I don't know what happened in the interview that Newmark didn't come over with Glenn Newmark, the assistant GM of the Commanders, who did work with the Lions in the past. So there was some continuity. It just didn't work. They looked at a couple different candidates in this mix. But to me, I think the Jets got these hires right. Now, am I going to go out and throw a parade? No, not yet. Because I think one of the things, and Ralph mentioned this here in the comments about what I said last night in our group chat. The AFC to me is very weak, and I don't mean weak from the competitors, because nobody's beating the Chiefs in the AFC. But think about Josh Allen, who's now lost 4 times to Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. Lamar Jackson, that can't seem to win the big games against Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. The only one that's beaten Patrick Mahomes that's still playing is Joe Burrow. So the AFC still runs through Kansas City, as much as people hate to say that. And I said that on a bunch of different shows. I said the Chiefs, to me, until you beat them, they're the champs. And to me, it looked like they were bored in the regular season, because the postseason is their season. And that's when they go to shine the most. So I think the AFC is more winnable, at least more danceable than people think. And I think that's why the other question for Aaron Glenn is, what does it mean for Aaron Rodgers? And to me, what it means is, I think Aaron Rodgers, if he wants to come back, is going to be with the Jets. And the reason being is, you're a first-time head coach. You're going to want an experienced quarterback. The Jets are picking 7th in the draft. They're not in a position to take a rookie quarterback. At least they're not going to get Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. So are you really going to risk starting your career as a coach with Jalen Milroe or Jackson Dart or Quinn Ewers? No. Are you going to go with Tyrod Taylor or Jameis Winston or Justin Fields? If you don't have to, no. Aaron Glenn coached against Aaron Rodgers in the NFC North. I mean, he's very familiar with that. And I think Aaron Glenn's the kind of coach that Aaron Rodgers would want to play for. I'm not saying Aaron Rodgers played a part in this coaching search. I don't believe that at all. I think Aaron Rodgers was going to wait and see what happens. Not saying he's going to be thrilled or angry or upset or anything like that. I don't believe that in the slightest. But bringing Aaron Rodgers back as your bridge quarterback for 1 year is not the worst thing in the world. And you look at the way he played at the end of last year, he was much better. He's going to get a full year to recover from his injuries, which is huge. And the Jets are not – remember the conversation with Jake Asman a few weeks ago. They're not as far off as you think. Now, are they far off from being a Super Bowl contender? Yes. But can they make the playoffs in the AFC? Sure. I mean, there's room to grow if the Jets can find the right coordinator in the mix. And I think offensively, the guy you hear about it is Nick Caley. I mean, Nick Caley's worked under Sean McVay, turned down the Patriots offensive coordinator job last year. Alex Van Pelt eventually got that job, but a lot of people think Nick Caley can fit. And then if you get Steve Wilks potentially as defensive coordinator, I mean, Steve Wilks is an experienced head coach. So you basically put another coach with Aaron Glenn. To me, it's all about the coordinators. I mean, Clint Kubiak is a name that was out there, but it looks like he's going to go to Seattle. If you put the right coordinators in place around Glenn, it could work. And you give Aaron Rodgers a guy who's been in Sean McVay's offense, and Sean McVay's coordinators usually turn out to be pretty good coaches. Usually. You're going to have your hits and your misses, especially when you look at the Belichick coaching tree or the Parcells coaching tree. You're going to have your hits and misses. But if Nick Caley's the guy, you could do worse than that easily. So to me, if the coordinators were Caley on the offensive side and Steve Wilks on the defensive side, I think you could go you could do worse if that's the plan. Now we're going to see if that's the plan, because the Jets, I think, are going to go through this process very carefully. A lot of teams right now are looking for those offensive and defensive coordinators. So we're going to see what experience they end up getting in this process. And it sounds like Jay Glazer said yesterday that Glenn's going to meet with Aaron Rodgers and the decision's going to be sooner rather than later, which is the Jets absolutely need. Ideally, they want an answer, I think, before free agency in March. That would be the goal. If they can get that answer, great. And in the end, we'll see what happens. Now, in terms of the Giants, they were at much of their brass, Joe Schoen, Brian Daboll, I think Brandon Brown as well, the Giants assistant GM. They were at the East-West Shrine game. Now, you're going to get a lot of over the next couple of weeks between the Shrine Bowl, the Senior Bowl. That's where all the top college prospects are going to go, showcase their talent before the Combine in February. And there was the video of Brian Daboll dapping Shedeur Sanders. And you're going to see a lot of noise around potentially Shedeur Sanders and the Giants at number 3. And I think the question is going to be, we don't know what the Titans or the Browns are going to do with the first 2 picks. We've seen Tennessee with their most recent hire, Mike Borgonzi, a GM. We've seen their front office talk, and a lot of people saying the Titans are looking for a generational talent. Now, do they believe Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward are generational talents? Are they smoke screening people? Are they talking about Abdul Carter? Are they talking about somebody else in this process? Who knows? So we don't know if Tennessee necessarily needs a quarterback. Cleveland, we think, needs a quarterback. But is Shedeur going to use his dad in Dion and think that Shedeur is going to force his way to New York? I mean, that's going to be – I'm sure Shedeur wants to be in New York. We saw the Giant cleats at the Alamo Bowl. I think he wants to be a Giant. But does he have the power to pull an Eli Manning and say, I will only play for the New York Giants? And will Joe Schoen have to trade draft picks and trade future capital to make that move in a desperation move? We're going to see, but it's clear when you look at least through the videos of the practices, and Shedeur is not going to play, but he was interviewing with Tennessee and Cleveland and the Giants this week. So he is making the rounds, at least interviewing. That's going to be one to watch between now and April, because the Giants have to find their quarterback, and they have to find it quick, especially for Schoen and Daboll, or that's going to be it for them essentially. And congratulations goes out to 2 former Giants. We'll preview the Super Bowl more in depth next week, but Saquon Barkley, who was fantastic yesterday, 3 touchdowns, 60-yard touchdown, the Eagles' first play from scrimmage. I mean, he changed the Eagles. We talked about this all year. He wasn't going to be this for the Giants. To me, honestly, he's the MVP of the league. And he has made the Eagles what they are. Because you look at the Eagles last year, they had DeAndre Swift, sure, but Saquon has changed everything about that team. Period. Big runs every game. Yes, the offensive line has been a big help, but Jalen Hurts is not making these progressions without Saquon Barkley. So for him to finally get a shot at Super Bowl Sunday is actually his 28th birthday, which I think is really cool. And he will get a chance at a ring, which he absolutely deserves. The Giants were never going to put that talent around him. They hadn't put that talent around him, so he was never going to have this success with the Giants. And congrats to Steve Spagnuolo, who is going to have a chance to maybe win his 5th Super Bowl as a coordinator. 5 as a coordinator. That's incredible. And to me, will at least appear in 5. I think it's appear in 5, I believe. It's not win 5. But when you look at Spagnuolo, and I think the question is, well, why are the Chiefs always so good? You think about the NFL, right? And I look at the Chiefs dynasty. I go back and always look at the Patriots dynasty because it's kind of mirrors hand in hand. Teams used to poach Belichick coaches left and right to try to hire them. We saw Charlie Weiss leave. We've seen Romeo Crennel leave. We've seen Josh McDaniels leave, come back and then leave and come back. And things like Brian Flores leave. Nobody takes Chiefs coaches. Nobody. Eric Bieniemy, nobody wanted him. Matt Nagy, nobody wants him because everyone thinks Matt Nagy's the former Bears coach. So they don't want Matt Nagy. And I know Steve Spagnuolo had a rough time with the Rams. We've talked about it. We had Danielle McCartan on last week, and she mentioned as a dark horse candidate for the Jets should be Spagnuolo as a coach because he knows to handle New York. You're telling me that Steve Spagnuolo, who's one of the best defensive coordinators in the history of the league, shouldn't get a second chance to be a head coach, who's been around winning the last few years with the Chiefs, who's been around winning with the Giants, who knows what it takes to do to win, and you don't want to hire that guy? I don't get, again, brain drain the Chiefs. If you want to beat them, take away their coordinators. At least make them have to hire different coordinators. But to me, that doesn't make sense. So Steve Spagnuolo, to me, when you think about it, to me, he's a Hall of Fame coordinator. When you think about the game plans he had to stop Tom Brady, you think about the game plans that he's had to stop some of the top AFC coaches. And I love what Ryan Clark said last night on Twitter. There's going to be a lot of AFC quarterbacks that are going to have a Hall of Fame jacket and no Super Bowl ring to show for it because they were in the wrong era. Brady's era, you say the same thing. We talk about with Manning and Rivers, and Manning's got rings, but not as many as he would have in a different era. But Rivers, Roethlisberger's got a couple. But the amount of AFC talent, I mean, look at Lamar, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow. It's there. But Steve Spagnuolo must make game plans to stop the ball. And the Chiefs are in this game. It's going to be a really good game, I believe. It's going to come down to the wire. And with Mahomes, it's always going to come down to the wire. And we'll dive into the X's and O's next week. But I want to give a little bit of a shout-out to Saquon and Steve Spagnuolo, two guys that are going to be playing against each other. Spagnuolo's going to have the game plan to stop them. But it's going to be fun to watch those two go at it. So we'll take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll talk about Steve Cohen's comments about Pete Alonso. We'll talk about the Hall of Fame results from baseball this week. We'll do a little Knicks as well. We're listening to New York State of Sports and IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all the sports. We'll be back in just a few minutes.
Hey there, IE Sports Radio fans. Be sure to check out our sponsor, Seal the Deal Wax Seals by Cecilia B. You just finished your very own wedding or baby shower invitations and you're looking for that extra special touch? Maybe you just wrote a letter to a relative or a friend and you want to add to their smile when they receive it. Then seal the deal with Cecilia's handmade sealing wax stamps for your invitations, letters, and gifts. You bring the deal, we'll bring the seal. You can find them on Instagram at sealthedeal_wax stamps and on Facebook, Seal the Deal Wax Seals.
For the last 10 years, IE Sports Radio has been bringing you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. Make sure to follow us at IE Sports Radio on X, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube to keep up with the latest in sports and with all of our shows. Also, make sure to check out our daily updated website at iesportsradio.com. At iesportsradio.com, you can see our daily show schedule and check out all of our show pages with personal bios to learn a little bit more about each of our awesome hosts. In addition to our show pages, you can catch the IE Sports Radio blog, Hall of Fame, Fans of the Month page, and our merchandise shop including t-shirts, tank tops, caps, long sleeves, hoodies, and more. For now over a decade here at IE Sports Radio, we've continued to be by the fans, for the fans, and we thank you all for your support and for making IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that is sports.
And welcome back to New York State of Sports here in IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all of the sports. Ricky K here with you. We just rocked up with some football. Let's move over to the Diamond. Again, just 2 weeks away from spring training. Pitchers and catchers are just 2 days after the Super Bowl, so we're not that far away from action in Tampa and Port St. Lucie. Of course, nothing really new with the Yankees. They haven't really made any significant moves over the last week or so, so a lot of this is maybe about the Mets. And Steve Cohen made some interesting comments about Pete Alonso this week. Now, the Mets this weekend had their amazing fan fest, amazing day, fan fest at Citi Field, which I think is a really cool thing. You had players, the Mets announcers, Gary, Keith, and Ron were there doing a panel. You had so many different things. And to me, it's no excuse. Every team in sports should have some kind of fan fest before the season. just to have get the fans, get the players and things like that. Every team should have it. The Mets did a fantastic job with it. And Steve Cohen was up there, and the fans were booing when David Stearns and Steve Cohen were talking about Pete Alonso and why he wasn't here. And you were getting the re-sign Pete chance. And Steve Cohen said that he thought the Juan Soto negotiations were hard. The Pete Alonso one has been worse. They made offers. They don't like the structures of the offers. And to me, when you look at the situation, you look at everything that the Mets want to do. And Steve Cohen's even said it. They're okay with moving forward if they have to. And Joel Sherman reported in the New York Post this week that they've told Brett Beatty and Mark Vientos to prepare at first base in case they need to in spring training to do those workouts. Look, Pete Alonso's stuck. We've talked about the last couple of weeks. I know the Blue Jays have looked into him. The Angels have talked. There's been reports the Angels have talked about him. You could see a team like Detroit, if they miss out on Bregman, maybe they reach out and try to make a deal. But the fact of the matter is Scott Boras misplayed this market with Pete Alonso big time. And I think he banked on the emotional appeal of the Mets. And Steve Cohen wasn't around when they drafted Pete Alonso. David Stearns wasn't around when the Mets drafted Pete Alonso. David Stearns doesn't look at Alonso with the same emotion that fans do. But that's why you bring in David Stearns. That's why you bring it. That's why Steve Cohen is here as an owner. And Steve Cohen's a fan. But in the end, as he said, this is an expensive roster. I mean, they still have to make other moves. I mean, you saw that the AJ Minter move. I'm sure the Mets would think they can maybe make another move to change things. Maybe they go out and get an infielder. Maybe they go out and get another bullpen arm. Maybe they go out and get a Max Scherzer, bring him back. He was working out for teams this week. You got to account some financial resources to that. And if that's the case, there's nowhere that Pete Alonso fits. I mean, the longer Pete Alonso waits to sign, the Mets are going to make moves and he's going to be out of their price range. It's not quite the same thing you saw at the Astros where Alex Bregman, there's a chance he could come back after they traded Brian Presley to the Cubs and Jose Altuve saying, look, I'll play left field to make Alex Bregman play second base and come back if we have to. I'm not saying that a Met has to come out and say, well, I'm going to not play first base, but there's something there that's missing. And you're not seeing we need Pete Alonso back. We need Pete Alonso back. You're not seeing that. And I think that's where Pete misplayed the market. Scott Boras misplayed the market. There's so many things that goes wrong in this negotiation. I mean, Pete, I'm sure, is going to want opt-outs. He's going to want a shot at go back in free agency and try again. I don't think the Mets are going to look to entertain that at all. I think if they want a straight 3 years, they're going to go for a straight 3 years. But Steve Cohen told it straight. And I think you would want any owner or GM to tell you straight as a fan. Like, in this day and age, fans aren't stupid. Like, they have as much resources as these front offices do. There's so much out there. So to me, when you look at this equation, you want your owner and your GM and your manager or head coach to tell you straight. At least tell you straight to the ability that they can. And you saw Steve Cohen do that this week. I thought that was refreshing. And you know you're going to get booed. You know that some fans are not going to like it. Pete Alonso doesn't come back. But, I mean, that's the reality. You don't make moves just to appease fans. You don't do it. So for Steve Cohen to do that, I thought it was a really good job. And a good job by the Mets with the Fan Fest this week. Hall of Fame results came out. Ichiro, CC, Billy Wagner in the Hall of Fame. Congrats to all three of those players. No surprises there. Carlos Beltran should get in next year. Beltran, of course, had a good run with the Mets. Looking at strike three against Wainwright aside, it's to me though, the only thing I question with Beltran is running one of the bigger sign stealing scandals more costly than PEDs. Is that cheating worse than PEDs? That would be the only thing I would argue keeping Beltran out, because Beltran to me has had, while his regular season numbers are not the 500 home run club or anything like that, you look at the memorable postseason now with the Astros in 2004, and he was a really good clutch player in his own right. So to me, he should get in. I think Andrew Jones next year should get in, one of the better defensive center fielders that we've seen recently. And of course, he used to play for the Yankees at the end of his career, but he's more known for the time with the Braves. It's good to see CC that will go in as a Yankee. I think he should go in as a Yankee. As much as he was great in Cleveland in his early years, he really defined his legacy in New York. When you think about not wanting to be with the Yankees originally, Brian Cashman convincing him that they need him to be a leader in that clubhouse after the disastrous 2008 and coming in and just dominating right from the shoot. Big postseason start after big postseason start, CC would deliver. And even changing his pitching toward the middle of his career. Like, he became a really vocal leader in that clubhouse and really became everything the Yankees could have asked for. He's going to get his number retired, I think, by the team, as he should. And he was an ace in every way, shape, or form. And you could tell when he was out, you missed him. You missed him because of that personality that he had. So CC deserves it. And Ichiro, remember when he got traded to the Yankees, how big that was. Ichiro was loved by everybody, which makes it kind of surprising that he wasn't unanimous for the Hall of Fame. But I don't know what that voter's thinking, nor am I going to here to do a witch hunt for that voter. But Ichiro was really the guy that you just knew would get a hit when he needed to get a hit, wouldn't strike out, good fielder. More known for the Mariners, obviously, but had a cup of coffee here in the Bronx. So congrats to those three. They'll have their day in July in Cooperstown at the Hall of Fame. Going over to basketball, the Knicks get right back on track. They had a couple of big wins this week. They had the win in Brooklyn on Tuesday. That one was a little bit closer than people expected, but they found a way to get a win there. And then they had the win on Martin Luther King Day against the Hawks, getting revenge on Trae Young, 119-110. And then Saturday night, they just dominated the Kings, 143-120. Knicks got 33 from OG Anunoby, 27 from Mikal Bridges, 25 from Brunson, 20 points, 18 boards, 11 assists from Josh Hart. The Knicks as a team shot 49% from the floor. They were really excellent in that regard. Sacramento's not a good defensive team, but the Kings are at least an over 500 team. So it was a small test for the Knicks that they ended up passing. And through the first 46 games, they're 30-16. There's not much else you could look for at the Knicks. They come out, they can win games offensively. They proved against Brooklyn they can win games ugly. That was an ugly game that they played, and Cat did a really good job in that one. He had 25 and 16, but as a team, they just didn't really make their three-point shots. They were 28% shooting the three, not quite where you want them to be. Brooklyn, of course, is in rebuilding mode. They're not really looking to win. In fact, they're 2 games out of maybe getting a top 3 pick, which is going to really benefit them if they get the best top 3 odds in the lottery. But the Knicks go out, get a sweep of the week, which is what they needed. And now they have a much tougher test the next couple of weeks. They have Memphis tonight. Memphis is a game better than them in the standings. Knicks are favored by 3.5. They have Denver and Nikola Jokic on Wednesday. They usually play well against the Nuggets, but that game is at the Garden. And then Saturday, a big matchup in primetime, 8:30 on ABC against LeBron, Anthony Davis, and the Lakers. So 3 really good games that they'll have this week, and then they'll come back. We'll look ahead Monday to the matchup with the Rockets at the Garden. The Rockets are 30-14 as well. And then they will have Boston a week from Saturday at the Garden. So a lot of good matchups there. Knicks right now are 2 games out of the 2 seed from Boston. So they are right there in the mix to that 3 seed. Trade deadline, of course, is a week from Thursday. So hopefully by next week we'll have more clarity on what the Knicks are actually looking for at the trade deadline. Maybe some more news in terms of that. And then the Nets. Good thing the Nets did on Saturday. They honored Vince Carter, Hall of Fame retirement ceremony, retired his number. Look, Vince Carter did everything you could ask for in Brooklyn. He was not in Brooklyn, in New Jersey. Between everybody remembers Jason Kidd, everybody remembers Richard Jefferson, everybody remembers Vince Carter. I mean, that 3 kind of really changed Brooklyn and changed the Nets, made them go into more of a, not a household name in New York, because look, the Nets are always going to be second fiddle to the Knicks. We've seen that even when they make deep runs in the playoffs. But Vince Carter coming to New Jersey, being still that transcendent player, being the guy that would have hallmark dunks every now and then, big time shots. I was listening to the game the other night great conversation that Noah Eagle and Tim Crapstraw had with Lawrence Frank, his former coach from 04 to 08. So congratulations to Vince Carter, a ceremony well-deserved. And it makes you wonder a couple of also the Nets. They had a couple of games this week. They lost to Phoenix on Wednesday. And you wonder, with all the issues with Phoenix, would Kevin Durant ever want to come back to Brooklyn on the right terms? Meaning, like, you give Kevin Durant an opportunity to build a team. Would it work? I mean, Kevin Durant, from all accounts, and you listen to him talk about his time with the Nets, loved everything here. Which I can't.
Hey, Cleveland and Columbus sports fans. This is Jen D, host of the Show of the Land on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. If you love
What's up, everybody? This is Taryn Rodriguez. Are you a fan of volleyball? Are you a fan of Thunder Spikes? Then I have the show for you, Set Point, where I cover NCAA men's and women's volleyball, high school boys and girls volleyball, beach volleyball, and even professional volleyball. Catch the action every week here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
What's up, Pittsburgh? This is Ralph Galise, the host of the Injury Report on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Are you that passionate diehard Steelers, Penguins, Pirates, or just a Pittsburgh sports fan? Then please join me on the Injury Report every Tuesday on IE Sports Radio, the direct feed for all that is sports, and I will update you on all that's black and gold. Have you telling your Pittsburgh fans and friends what's up with Pittsburgh sports. Tune in Tuesday with me, Ralph Galise, the Injury Report on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Let's go!
Of course, apologies for the technical difficulties we had just a short while ago. Some interesting things happening here, but we are back. Thank you for sticking with us here on New York State Sports Night Sports Radio, direct feed for all of the sports. We're going to get into the NHL. And I think a cool thing to the NHL this week was throughout the course of the year, is the all-quarter century team. So honoring the last 25 years in the NHL. And this week was the announcements of the Devils, the Islanders, and the Rangers. And I want to first shout out the Neutral Zone, Adam Karnick and Zach Poplis. Every Tuesday, they're on the air. They have me on the show to talk some New York Sirens. They unfortunately lost to Toronto this weekend, but I was on to talk PWHL and as well as latest with the Rangers and the local Siren. So thanks for Adam and Zach for having me on. I had a great time. But the all-quarter century teams are out. We're going to get into each of them. The Devils, we'll start with first their forwards in the first and second teams. Their first team, Patrick Elias, Jack Hughes, and Zach Parise. Scott Niedermayer and Scott Stevens on defense, and Martin Brodeur, the obvious choice, in net. And then their second team, the forwards, Scott Gomez, Travis Zajac, and Jamie Langenbrunner. Defense, Andy Green and Brian Rafalski, and Corey Schneider, your second team goaltender. Look, a lot of those make sense. Was reading something, trying to look up maybe Nico Hischier would have been a guy considered over Langenbrunner. But you have to remember the Devils, a lot of the last 25 years, is going to remember for those cup runs in the early 2000s. So you're going to get a lot of guys from those teams. I mean, you can make Jason Arnott, who had a cup-winning goal, could have been on there, but I could throw a couple other. Adam Henrique would have been maybe another one. Of course, his famous goal against the Rangers, but I think overall they got it right with the Devils. I can't really see the problems with that. So that was the New Jersey team. For the Islanders, their first team, Josh Bailey, Brock Nelson, John Tavares, the forwards. You have to have John Tavares for an Islanders list. Nick Leddy, Adam Pelech, your defense, and Ilya Sorokin in net. Your second team, Matt Barzal, Anders Lee, and Franz Nielsen, your forwards. Kenny Johnson and Ryan Pulak on defense. And Semyon Varlamov, the second team goaltender. Now, if Ralph's still here, I don't know if you'd agree with this, but I'm shocked Rick DiPietro was not here. Being that he was a big part of the early part of this quarter century. He's been an all-star goaltender. I don't really look at Semyon Varlamov and I think second team goalie to me. Now, Sorokin, I think, has earned that right. He's been pretty good with the Islanders, I would say. But this decision to not have DiPietro on here was kind of surprised by. That would be the only thing I'd have against the Islanders. And the Rangers side, first team, Chris Kreider, Artemi Panarin, and Mika Zibanejad, Adam Fox and Ryan McDonough on defense, Henrik Lundqvist in net. Your second team, Jaromir Jagr, Derek Stepan, and Matt Zuccarello. Defense, Dan Girardi and Mark Stahl, and Igor Shesterkin in net. Again, not a lot wrong there at the Rangers. I mean, you could argue Marian Gaborik, but not a lot of time. Like, he wasn't a Ranger for the extensive portion of his career. I mean, Rick Nash. I mean, the Rangers have had guys get good cups of coffee here, and they've had big runs over the course of the last 25 years. Like, remember, before the Rangers were making those runs with Lundqvist, they were bringing in guys trying to make things work. I mean, it's a testament, I think, to the run Panarin's had that he's first team and he's only been here a couple of years. I mean, he's been as dominant as advertised. And Mika, through his own issues lately, has been a really strong player. I mean, again, this core has done good things, just not great things. A lot of the core, you look at the second team, like the Stepans, Zuccarellos, and those guys, a lot of people are going to remember. Stepan, of course, had that goal against Washington in the postseason that people remember. And this is a good list to kind of look back at history. And again, I don't think there's any major snubs. Like I said, Devils, maybe a T-shirt. Islanders, I think it's DiPietro. Rangers, I guess Martin St. Louis. Brad Richards wasn't great. But there's a couple of names you can look at. Delzato was good on defense timing, but Dan Girardi being on here, I think, was huge. So, again, get those lists out. Some fantastic stuff. Now, look at the locals otherwise. Devils dealing with some injuries of their own. Markstrom in net with a knee sprain. He's going to be out for the next 4 weeks. Fortunately for the Devils, in a couple of weeks, you have the Four Nations break, so they won't miss too much of Markstrom in net. They still have Jake Allen, so getting him this offseason was a major push to at least have two quality goaltenders. Nico Hischier is not playing tonight for the Devils against the Flyers, so that's a little bit of a concern. The Devils are dealing with the injury bug at the moment in a big way. And Jack Hughes, of course, gets the game-winning goal the other night in overtime in Montreal. That was big to get 2 points. They had the dominant win over the Bruins last Wednesday, 5-1. Dawson Mercer had a pair of goals. Hischier a goal and 2 assists. Dougie Hamilton had a goal. They scored 5 unanswered in the last 2 periods. Devils right now, you look at the standings in the Metro, they are 2 points behind the Carolina Hurricanes for third. They have the Flyers in a home and home this week. So they'll play Philly in Philadelphia tonight and then at the Prudential on Wednesday. And then they will play Buffalo on Sunday. That's a road game for the Devils. Rangers missed a golden opportunity this week. Now, when I say golden opportunity, they missed an opportunity to get a point on the board. They were playing the Avalanche now. The Avalanche made a monster trade. Malheim Musings host Aaron Ewell did a good job breaking this down last night. The Mikko Rantanen trade going from Colorado to Carolina. And that's big for both a lot of these Eastern Conference teams because Carolina, you thought that core was going to be done. They're making one more push at it. And Rantanen's a big piece. Jack Drury's now in Colorado, so Chris Drury got to see his son remember the Drury family yesterday. And the Rangers end up tying the game. They fought back from a pair of 2-goal deficits, and Colorado scores in the odd man rush with 15 seconds left. So the Rangers are unable to get a point against Colorado. Igor did not play well. But they've had a good week overall. I mean, they dominate Ottawa on Tuesday 5-0. They go out Thursday, they win 6-1 over Philly. So the offense is starting to find its form. When you think about it, they've scored 19 goals in the last 4 games. So they're starting to find some kind of flow. They got a big matchup Tuesday at home against Carolina. And then they will play Boston on Saturday. That's on ABC at 3:30 face-off. And then at home against the Vegas Golden Knights on Sunday. Where the Rangers stand right now, they are 3 points behind the Lightning for the final playoff spot. They're 4 points behind the Bruins. So this is going to be a big game for the Rangers on Saturday. Anytime you have a chance to gain points on a team in front of you, you have to take advantage of it, and they have for the most part. I mean, Montreal, they could have got 2 points. Columbus, they could have avoided Montreal and Columbus from getting a point because of the overtime games, but all things considered, they've done a good job, and they have 2 games at hand on the Bruins. Boston's played 51 games. The Rangers have played 49. So they have that advantage. That's just going to be they're going to have to continue to play these good games against good competition. I got to give the Islanders credit. I mean, they have come out since that last week we said they missed opportunity, trying to save their season in some way. They have won 4 in a row. They beat the Blue Jackets on Monday, beat the Flyers on Friday, and then a big win in a back-to-back against Carolina in overtime Saturday 3-2. So the Islanders are right back in the swing of things as well. They have won 4 straight. The problem is that they're not really going to help them that much. They are at 49 points right now. They are 6 points behind the Lightning and the Blue Jackets for that. Well, the Lightning and Blue Jackets at 55 points. The Lightning would be in if the season ended today. But the Islanders keep taking big injuries after big injuries. They've actually had to go out and sign Tony DeAngelo, try to help their defense core. And I know Tony DeAngelo, a very controversial figure when it comes to his time with the Rangers. He's been with Carolina. And right now, Lou Lamoriello is looking to just find any piece he can because it shows you the Islanders are still trying to win. They're not trying to go out there and sell pieces, although, as I've said, they've had good pieces, whether it's Brock Nelson that they could maybe deal or something like that. But right now, they are dealing with Pulock, who's on IR, Hogberg, who's been a big story in net. He is on IR. They've had to call up Skarek as an emergency goaltender behind Sorokin. So that's going to be big. And even Matt Barzal said today it's laughable how many injuries the Islanders have had. They have had to fight through so many different things, but they're trying to stay in it. And I think that's all that any fan could ask for is they're trying to fight through. They have a difficult week. They have Colorado Tuesday at UBS. They're at the Flyers on Thursday. And then they are at the Lightning Saturday and at the Panthers Sunday before a home matchup with Vegas. So Islanders are going to get a step up in class 3 of the next 4 games. We'll see how they handle playing Colorado, Tampa, and Florida. Before 4 nations are about mid-February, so we have a couple of weeks for the first huge break in the NHL schedule. We're kind of do like that first half update and things like that. Real quickly, go to college basketball. Actually, we'll take one more timeout. We'll come back. We'll wrap up with some college basketball. So I want to do some love with St. John's and catch up on Rutgers a little bit. So we'll take a quick timeout. We'll be right back after this.
What's happening, sports fans? Are you a fan of Southern California sports? Are you looking for a show hotter than a hot summer day in California? Then look no further than the SoCal Supreme Sports Show, where I talk about all things Southern California sports. That's right, all sports teams from Southern California. From the hard-hitting tackles of the NFL, to the killer crossovers and big three-pointers of the NBA and WNBA, to the grand slams of the MLB, to the bone-chilling goals of the NHL, and to the booming kicks of the MLS. The SoCal Supreme Sports Show has it all for you. Oh, and let us not forget about the college sports as well. So join me, Taryn Rodriguez, every week here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hey, Cleveland and Columbus sports fans. This is Jen B, host of the Show of the Land on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. If you love Cleveland and Columbus sports like I do, be sure to tune in live to the Show of the Land on Tuesdays, where we will cover the Cleveland Browns, Cavs, Guardians, and Monsters. We will also talk about the Columbus Blue Jackets, Crew, Fury, and of course, the Ohio State Buckeyes. We'll also cover other colleges in the area like Akron, Kent State, Cleveland State, Mount Union, John Carroll, Baldwin Wallace, Youngstown State, among others. So like I said, if you love Cleveland and Columbus sports like I do, be sure to tune in Tuesdays to the Show of the Land with Jen B on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Of course, we'll wrap up episode 75, a little bit of college basketball here on New York State of Sports and IE Sports Radio. Thank you for sticking with us here on a Monday. St. John's had one game this week, and it followed a similar script that they've been following in this Big East season. Going down 10 to Xavier at the half, down 16 at one point, and then to find a way to win the way they did in overtime, 79-71, 14 points in overtime. Kadary Richmond had one of his better games, 19 points, 9 of 17 from the floor. Adam Scott, RJ Lewis with 16, Zobi Ejiofor 16 and 8. They put up a pretty good showing. And this is a St. John's team that just shows resilience. It shows a team that, hey, they can find a way to come back in the second halves of games. They can find ways to win when they're not shooting the three. They made one three-pointer in the game, but they'll continue to get on the glass, to continue to get second chance points. They'll continue to be resilient defensively. Xavier had a really tough time with their pressure, and that's a good team they've swept this year. I mean, Xavier went out and beat Connecticut on Saturday. I mean, that was something you look at St. John's and look, they're going to find ways to win. I mean, this is St. John's best start. They're 17-3. We'll see where they get ranked coming up at some point in this hour. They're right now 20th in the country. I would think they would move up. They're tied with Marquette at 8-1 in the Big East. It's the best they've been in the Big East in the first 9 games since Lou Carnesecca was coaching. I mean, that's how special this team has been. They're going to get a tougher schedule. mean, they've gone through the teams they've needed to go through. And they're going to have a tough test Tuesday, tomorrow night, 6:30 against Georgetown in FS1. Georgetown lost to Providence over the weekend. That's always a tough game, especially Ed Cooley always going back to Providence. But Georgetown gave St. John's all they could handle in the first matchup. And with Devion Smith still struggling with a shoulder injury, I mean, you wonder when that eventually is going to come back to bite St. John's, that they don't have enough scoring to get through when they're having bad shooting games. But they're still finding ways to win. But their February schedule, again, very tricky. After Providence Saturday, they get Marquette at home next Tuesday. The UConn game, which we'll preview next week, because that's going to be a really fun game. UConn's been struggling. Dan Hurley's worried about his criticisms from officials. It's not going right for UConn. St. John's, I think, should be ahead of UConn when the next poll comes out. But we'll see what happens with that. But 2 opportunities for wins this week. Tomorrow at Georgetown, then Saturday at home against Providence. That's a noon tip on CBS Sports Network. I think, it is at Madison Square Garden. So that'll be something to watch, I think, for the Red Storm this week. Rutgers, they end up playing not a good week in the Big Ten. They lose to Penn State on Monday. That was really not the result they were hoping for, especially when they're starting to gain some momentum. And then Saturday, they take on Michigan State at the Garden. It was a CBS game, national television, great vibe. Unfortunately, Dylan Harper, who came off the bench, played 13 minutes, still dealing with an ankle injury, didn't play the bulk of the second half. And as much as Ace Bailey tried to stay in it, Cohen Carr and Michigan State were really good defensively against him. Bailey had 18 points, 9 boards, but Rutgers didn't get the secondary scoring until late. Jordan Durkak had a really good game, really good finish, 26 points, 4 3, 7 for 11. Michigan State was just too balanced, too good in the paint. They shot 48%. And they're not a team that's going to shoot a lot of threes. They're not a good three-point shooting team, but Tom Izzo has one of the more hotter teams in the country. And this has not been a good year for Steve Pikiell. I mean, they're 10-10 overall. They're in danger of maybe not even making the Big Ten tournament. I know Steve Pikiell was talking about how good the team is from an academic standpoint. But when you bring in 2 top 5 picks in the NBA draft, 2 projected top 5 NBA picks, you cannot be this bad. And the Rutgers Scarlet Knights did a really bad job and Harper's been banged up and he's been dealing with stuff, and Bailey's tried everything he can. They need a better supporting cast around those two. And it's also showing you can't just get 2-star freshmen and it's going to make everything better. I think people had high expectations for Rutgers, myself included, and they've just not been able to deliver. They will play Wednesday at Northwestern. That's a 9 o'clock tip on Big Ten Network. And then Saturday, 3:30 Eastern on Fox, they will play Michigan. That game is at Jersey Mike's Arena, Michigan, 21st in the country. They will play back-to-back ranked games, Michigan on Saturday, then Illinois next Wednesday at home. So Rutgers can still try for some signature wins and still look to really capture that Jersey Mike's magic that they've had over the last couple of years in Piscataway. But in the end, Rutgers is what they are. And that is not very good, to say the least. Very quickly around the rest of the local slate, we'll go to the ACC with Syracuse. Syracuse right now 3-6 in the ACC. They took a couple losses this week. Lost to Clemson 86-72 on Wednesday. And they lost to Pitt 77-73. So Ralph on the Injury Report is going to get to talk about that this week. Pitt just had too much at the end, and that's a team that trying to make the tournament, so they're not going to lose that game. Syracuse is at Stanford. That's 11 o'clock Eastern, ESPNU on Wednesday, and they're at Cal on Saturday before they welcome Duke to the Carrier Dome a week from Wednesday. So we'll look ahead to that one as well. Duke and Cooper Flagg probably are the second best team in the country right now. In terms of the other teams in the Big East, Seton Hall plays tonight against Providence. Providence beat them a couple of weeks ago. Seton Hall this week lost a tough one to Creighton, got blown out, by the way, 79-54. Pirates right now are just not in that position. We've talked about it nonstop. 1-8 in the Big East. They're not playing well with Gene Holloway. So we'll see what comes of them in the end. So very quickly, as we tend to we're going to wrap up here in a second. I just want to see Quentin Williams, of course, named to the Pro Bowl games along with Malik Neighbors. So the Jets, of course, Aaron Glenn, Darren Mogi introduced this week at the press. We'll have more on their press conference next week, and we'll dive into that a little bit more as we get more things on what's going on. The point is the Jets want to be able to not have so many head coaching things. Rich Sweeney pointed out that they have had 13 head coach press conferences since 2000, that counts the Bill Belichick one where he resigned after like a week as the Jet coach. So 13 coaching changes over the last 25 years. And they're going to hope that Aaron Glenn actually makes it to that first 5-year contract. So we're going to see if all of that changes in this present time. So we're also going to, again, next week, we're going to look ahead to the Super Bowl. We'll hopefully be able to, we'll get some cool things working in for New York State of Sports as we head into February, which is going to be a lot of fun, including cool opportunities that hopefully, I hope you enjoyed the guests over the last couple of weeks. We're going to try and get some more guests over the next few weeks going into the year. I think it's been a really good thing for the network. Jake Asman and Danielle McCartan have been fantastic on the network. So that's going to be our show. The new head coach of the New York Jets. Again, maybe not the perfect hire, but the right hire. Darren Mogi, of course, the new GM of the Denver Broncos, for the Jets, formerly of the Denver Broncos, the assistant GM. I think he's going to pay off his experience working with some good coaches, John Fox, Gary Kubiak, Sean Payton. You see Aaron Glenn with his exposure to coaches. I think those two guys are going to work hand in hand and create some good things for the Jets. The question they're going to answer today is what's next with Aaron Rodgers. We'll see what happens with that. Knicks with a tough slate this week. Let's see what happens to Pete Alonso. And the news right now, the AP poll is coming out. St. John's is 15. So your Red Storm, a top 15 team in the country. Before they would have been if they'd won one of those first finishes in non-conference. It could be honestly a top 10 team if they came back. Props to the Red Storm. They are in the top 15 in the country. Haven't seen that in a long time. We'll see what happens with that. Of course, we'll wait for more news on Pete Alonso. What happens with that? In 2 weeks till spring training. When we get toward mid-February, we'll talk Yankees and Mets and what might be to come. Thanks for sticking around. You can tell my voice is not great. You can tell a bunch of other things. But thank you for sticking with us this week. Stay tuned to the rest of the day for IE Sports Radio. Of course, this is Kansas City is going to talk about the Chiefs going to the Super Bowl again. And we'll have a bunch of different shows on the network throughout the day. So from all of us here at New York State of Sports and from IE Sports Radio, for our founder, Larry B., and all of us here at the network, I'm Ricky K, saying enjoy the rest of the week. And we'll see you back here at this time, noon Eastern.